This is just a personal video. It's kind of a personal story. As a kid, ever since I was a little kid, I had arachnophobia really severely. And after so many awakenings, I love this spider. I love this spider in my house. And I'm not gonna get a paper towel and kick him out of my house into the cold. He's found some sort of refuge here. Something's let him here and he wants to be here. No, you get away. My cat's being an asshole. But ultimately, I'm loving the spider so much right now. And he's part of my story, and I don't want my cat to fucking punch the damn spider with his paw and kill the fucking spider. Because I fucking care about this guy. He's not even moving now. My cat fucking pounced on him, and I think he's fucking frozen in fear. I don't know if spiders have fear. Maybe some type of proto-fear. But the spider, he's just living his damn life. Whatever small life that is, it's not what makes it small. Have you lived as a goddamn spider? Do you have that direct experience? Maybe they're fucking like spiritual fucking god masters. At the end of the day, it doesn't seem that way to us. It really doesn't. But that's from a human perspective. At the end of the day, what makes what this spider's seeking in its life, whether it be some little flies to eat and whatever it needs, what makes that more or less meaningful than you as a little truth seeker trying to find God, trying to find truth, trying to find love, trying to find absolute infinity. You're just nature. And you have just as much control and just as little control as this spider, when really compared to that fucking infinity and that God and that truth. You're in a karmic situation. And now the spider's gone underneath my heat register. So I can't fucking I'll turn this camera around on myself. Yeah, so this is just about compassion and recognizing things. Recognizing everything's just moving according to its karmic nature, and part of that karmic nature is the gift of free will, or the illusion therein that us humans have. And whether it be Krishna or whether it be Thoth or a green Buddha or an orange Buddha or a red Buddha or a gold and a red Buddha or a Jesus Christ or a fat or gold Buddha or Freya or Archangel Michael, all things ultimately work in this way. There's not more merit to Jesus Christ in a lot of ways. People get caught up in this, and they get a lot of guilt, and they feel small, because they think that in some way, the Father in Christianity, that God, is the Christian idea is that Jesus incarnated as God to live a human life, and then he lived a perfect life. Well, incarnating as the Father with those karmic conditions, and all these people were already supposedly saying this is gonna be an important person, and the three wise men or whatever, I don't know the whole Christian story by, for, I'm not an expert in it by any means, but the idea is this: Jesus was created with a certain nature, and he was like a spider that humans could really look up to. He's like a really big spider, and it's like the little small spider sees the big spider, and it fixes on that. But ultimately, that's kind of a good thing, because maybe the big spider can teach the little spider things about how to be a better spider. And that's the beauty in all this nature working together. It's all nature. It's all nature. Nature is one of the most beautiful things, and it's everywhere. Humans aren't separate from nature. By definition, they are. It's kind of the definition of nature, is that there's some distinction between nature and humanity. But then we say, humans have a nature to them, and they're within nature and all this. The idea is that you're created with certain conditions, and you play those out, and you do have a free will, or at least, there is that experience of a free will. But how much are you actually divorced from that nature? To where you can say you actually have a will. What can you stop your own nature? No matter how enlightened or whatever you become, can you stop your own nature? That's my question. Part of my nature is, I was born into the Mormon church, and I have a mom who has a quite effective heart chakra that's opened. People in the spiritual community, they don't fucking look to Mormons and think chakras. When I was 19, my second significant spiritual experience of my adulthood, I had them in my childhood. I didn't even notice really what they were until finally, getting deeper and deeper into this. And then I realized, well, shit, I had a fucking solipsist awakening when I was like 3 or 4 years old in my bathroom as a little kid. And I had an awakening, and it was like very clear, formless like qualities of experience were kind of pulled into that when I look back into that memory. I realized, wow, that's what happened. But it was just a glimpse to a child, and I didn't even know what the fuck it was. And then, but anyway, my point was, so the second significant spiritual experience of my adulthood, I became an atheist when I was 12. Why did I become an atheist when I was 12? Well, because I had an inherent hateful nature towards the ignorance, the ignorance that I was perceiving. I was perceiving ignorance, and there certainly was, to some degree, the way us high awakened spiritual people want to talk about it and say that stage blue are ignorant. I perceived that ignorance, or whatever it seems like, to some really high intuitive degree. And when I was like 8 years old, I had a fucking gigantic visualization of just being like this 60-foot tall demon in the Mormon church that I was sitting in while people are like praying and singing hymns. I was in absolute hatred. Like the hatred of the most evil of evil itself. And I was completely visualizing in 8K 10 billion frames per second, myself ripping the these church folk to pieces, and their viscera hanging around and hanging out and all that. And it's like, wow, I didn't realize back then. I didn't realize what was happening. And then there was that intuitive hatred for them, and ultimately that stemmed into, and it was hatred for the ignorance that I was perceiving, or at least what I thought was ignorance. Maybe it wasn't at the time. I don't know. But this is kind of how I'm processing it. So anyway, when I was 12, I became what you might call a stage orange materialist, very logic-based thinker, and I was atheist and rejected all of religion. And but yeah, I had my first manic episode when I was 18. That was my first adult spiritual experience. And then when I was 19, I was in a depression, and I was not succeeding in college like I did in high school. High school was fucking easy. I had a 4.15 GPA when I graduated high school. And I didn't fucking try very hard at all. I didn't give a shit. Like, I did the minimum work to get the best result. And that's what my life's always been. I've always been a fucking lazy asshole with flying colors. In what I care about. Whatever I think is important, I'll do it. Put just enough effort in to get what I think is a good enough result. And maybe other people don't work that way. And that's kind of how I work. Honestly, just looking at myself. So, anyway, back to that Mormon experience and the chakras and all that. When I was 19, and I wasn't doing well in school, and I essentially was dropping out of college, about to, at the time, and I was pretty distressed about it. My mom suggested that I go talk to the bishop of our church that I grew up in. And I thought to myself, nice feeling in the crown chakra area location, as I'm telling you this story about Mormonism. So I went there and I talked to this bishop, and I told him about what was going on and how my life had turned wrong and all the struggles I was going through. And when I stopped speaking, with just a very powerful presence and very sincere calm, he said, "Brandon, I want to tell you something. God loves you. And Jesus Christ loves you." And my fucking heart chakra exploded. And I felt a love that I'd never felt in my entire life. And this is what we're leaving out. There are so many people who have spiritual connections, and it's really easy to judge on the spiritual path. It's actually one of the most toxic things, is that as you actually become more conscious and loving, it's very easy to create a shadow in anything that you would have been like before, or that you thought, or the way that you saw the world before. It's easy to make a shadow out of that and to hate it, and to not even admit that you hate it to yourself, and then throw things on top of that, and then avoid that you actually have hatred for these people that you're saying are below you. That's not fucking God realization. That's not enlightenment. That's not embodiment. And that's not true awakening. True awakening is when you're fucking at the level and you're walking outside and you see the most normal person on their porch, and they're old, and maybe they don't live in a good house or whatever,
And you just see them doing their thing, and you just realize there's all the same divinity you've ever experienced is in them too. And in that moment, you're the same fucking thing. You're the same fucking thing. So if you're going to go walking around and have any sort of an idea that you're above people, it's a stage in the process. Don't hate yourself for that happening. It's probably going to happen to some degree. For me, I liked to, especially in the middle stages of the journey, I so far, I really, attached to that like special feeling of I'm a spiritual person. I'm having awakenings. I'm going to truth. I care about the right things. Well, in the eyes of the absolute, that's true to a degree. But it's also fucking pretty damn bullshit to a degree too. So you gotta be really careful. And you gotta keep yourself in check. This journey is about loving other people. If we're talking about the human spiritual experience, which is all that we have to fucking talk about. Unless there are some people who know about the alien spiritual experience. If you do, comment on this video. I would like to have a legitimate conversation with you because I have had some fucking telepathic communication with some things like that. But, and I'd like to check notes. But anyway, so we're humans. And the highest human thing that you can really experience in normal human life is love. And that's why in a human experience, in your subjective reality as a human, in this perceptual bubble of being in a present moment that you think is stable and, there's some reality to. Ultimately, the human self is going to love more than anything else. And the most honest thing to admit is that you want to see God as love too. And the greatest thing is you can definitely have that experience to degrees probably beyond anything I can imagine. It doesn't matter how high you go. I think it always gets fucking higher is the thing. It's like it doesn't necessarily end. Love keeps going. It doesn't matter if God dies. It doesn't matter anything. Like the capability that I personally see for love to grow and to expand, at least is my working theory. This is my hypothesis based on all this fucking love and suffering and bliss and perfection and disgust and everything that I've been through on this fucking spiritual ass journey. I see that this goes higher. I think it was St. John of the Cross who talked about the ladder of love. That's a good awakening map to check out, erase that Christian shadow a little bit. Because probably a lot of us here, maybe almost all of us, have it a little bit. And even though I've had some amazing spiritual experiences with many Christian people in my life, spiritual experiences that, most people don't think these stage blue or green-ish, or maybe a little streak of, blue or orange, and then maybe a little streak of green. People get caught up in thinking like, oh, they're at this level, they have this experience. Well, you don't know what their fucking life is like. We're taught to go off of direct experience here, but you know what you're not going off of when you judge other people's situation like that and their subjectivity. It's all, you're being a dick. In a way. And you might be right while you're being a dick. But you could be right and not be a dick. So I guess that's the point of this video. Be right, but don't be a dick.